on your years as a baseball player is to have a spirit of gratitude. And so let me leave you with that first. So when I was drafted, there was a special condition found in my arm. I'd agreed to about $1 million. I was the 16th pick overall by the Texas Rangers. I was a hard thrower. I threw 94 to 97 as a collegiate junior, played on the Olympic team in 96 in Atlanta, and had been drafted by the Rangers. And at the end of the Olympics, I went down to sign my contract, and they found, a long story short, they found that I didn't have an ulnar collateral ligament in my right elbow. So the UCL ligament that gets replaced when you have Tommy John, I was born without that. And they found that out in an MRI, pre-physical MRI. If you're a first-round pick, you're probably going to have to go through a bunch of physicals. And one of the physicals I went through with the Texas Rangers was a physical where they put my elbow in this thing called the valgus stress test, and they applied some pressure to my arm from the backside and discovered that there was something not right. So they sent me to James Andrews. You guys know Andrews. Hopefully none of you will ever know Dr. Andrews, but I know him intimately, and I flew down there to get a second opinion because what had happened was the general manager called me in the office and they said, "All right, we don't even know if we want to sign you. You're damaged goods, we think." And so my whole life my baseball life kind of flashed in front of me. I dreamed about being a professional baseball player since I was that little. And, it was hard to swallow. So I went down to Dr. Andrews and went through all the same tests, and he put me in an MRI machine, and sure enough, it showed that I didn't have the existence of a UCL ligament in my right arm. I'd never been hurt a day in my life, never missed a bullpen. I was a quarterback in high school and wanted to play quarterback in college, but I saw a clear path for myself in baseball, so I only played one sport in college, but never missed a practice. I threw a lot of innings in college, a lot of innings on the Olympic team up until the time I was drafted, so I didn't see myself as damaged goods, but I certainly was going through a lot of adversity. And that's kind of one of the first things I want to talk to you about today is most of you here are the best of the best. It's kind of like Top Gun, right, for baseball players. You guys are the best of the best. Because you're the best of the best, you probably haven't had to go through a ton of adversity on the baseball field, but it's coming. It's coming for every one of you. And that's a real thing. And it's the guys who know how to deal with adversity the best that separate mediocrity from being really, really good. There are a lot of guys that you're going to run into as you go into college and you go to the professional ranks that are better than you, just as good as you, maybe not so good as you. But the guys who end up making it and sustaining a long career are the guys that can handle adversity the best. You guys are set up for failure. You know that, right? Because Hall of Famers are only successful 3 out of 10 times. Think about that. Right? If you're a 300 hitter in the major leagues for your whole career, you're going in the Hall of Fame if it's for a long career. That means you're failing 7 out of 10 times. So you got to try and figure out how to deal with adversity well. I can tell you from my experience some things that have helped me. First, be curious. Be curious about how to get better. Don't think that you have all the answers. Okay? I think one of the things that happens when we're young and we're coming up and we're having a ton of success out there, you think you got it all figured out. Know in your heart that you got space to grow, both as a human being and as a baseball player. Okay? Be coachable. So I was pitching in 2005, the first 10 years of my career with the Texas Rangers. I had cups of coffee in the major leagues, enough to kind of squeak out 2+ years out of 10 in the major leagues. Most of that time was spent in the minor leagues. I mean, I could have run for mayor in Oklahoma City, I feel like, because I was down there so long in AAA. But I got cups of coffee as a conventional guy. In 2005, Oral Hershiser was my pitching coach, and Buck Showalter, who manages the Baltimore Orioles now, was my manager. And I could kind of see the writing on the wall. My velocity had gone in 10 years from about 94, 95 with pretty good sink. I was a power pitcher. I threw good sinkers. I didn't have great command like Maddox or some of those other guys, but I had good movement and I threw hard. But each year that velocity started dropping. And so I had a lot of the other things that coaches look for, some of the intangibles that you're going to hear about from scouts and coaches. I fielded my position well. I was a good teammate. I was trustworthy on the field. I knew the bunt plays. I knew how to hold runners. I could do things like that. So I got the benefit of the doubt next to a guy who was equal in talent but couldn't do those other things. So I was able to squeak out a couple years. But as those years started to progress, my velocity started to drop. From about 94 till in 2005, I was drafted in 96, so over those 10 years, from 95 to about 87. And you guys know at the major league level, when I'm throwing against, Vladimir Guerrero and Carlos Delgado and those guys, I got really good at dodging baseballs when I was throwing 87 at the major league level. Now I had some moxie and I could survive it, but it wasn't pretty. And I had two coaches that loved me enough to tell me the truth. And so this is a lesson for you guys in both adversity and coachability. Okay? They called me in the office and they said, I'd scuffled a few outings in a row, and they're like, R.A., I know you've been a Ranger for 9 years and we really appreciate all your hard work and yada, yada, yada. And then the next thing they said is, what you have now isn't going to cut it anymore. Like, you're not good anymore as a conventional pitcher. And they told me that, and it was hard to hear. Right, because I felt like I was the best every time I went out on the mound, even though I was working with mediocre stuff, and that's being generous. But they loved me enough to tell me the truth, and not only did they love me enough to tell me the truth, they loved me enough to give me an opportunity to do something else. They knew that I had a good knuckleball, and so I would mess around with the knuckleball. Like I think I was pitching against. In fact, this is ironic now that I'm thinking about it, but I was pitching against Tim Wakefield on Sunday Night Baseball, and I was a conventional pitcher. And I threw 2 or 3 knuckleballs in the game, one to Manny Ramirez, one to David Ortiz, coupled with 2 strike counts, and got him to swing and chase, and Joe Morgan noticed it. And so Oral Hershiser and Buck took notice of that, and that was in 2004, I think, 3 or 4. So when they called me in the office, they said, we think you have a chance to be a good knuckleball pitcher, and what we want to do is give you a chance to go down to the minor leagues and figure it out. It's either that, or we're probably going to say bye to you. And so, of course, I said I would love to try to continue chasing my dream as a knuckleball pitcher. But I had to have people in my life that told me the truth. And I had to ask a lot of questions, because when I got to AAA, my first major league outing was, and this is not hyperbole, guys, this is not embellishment. My first minor league outing as a knuckleballer, I gave up 10 earned runs in 4 innings. Okay, I gave up 6 stolen bases. You can go look it up. I hit 2 guys, struck out 1, and I lasted 4 innings, and the manager came and he said, hey, I'll see you in 5 days, because we were on a 5-day rotation. They gave me the freedom and latitude to fail. And because they did that, I was able to figure something out. Next time got a little better. Next time got a little better. I called Charlie Huff. I called Phil Necro. I called Tim Wakefield. I was curious about how do I throw this pitch. I have to unlearn a mechanic that I've had my whole life, trying to rebuild a new mechanic that can produce a good knuckleball, and that's not easy. So when I throw a knuckleball, I want the ball to rotate from the time it leaves my hand till the time it gets to the catcher's mitt about a quarter of a revolution. All right? So that's what I've got to try to feel. I've got to try to feel a release point that imparts about a quarter revolution on the baseball from the time it leaves my hand till the time it gets to the catcher's mitt. If I'm able to do that 120 times a game, I'm probably going to throw a complete game. If I can't, then I'm going to give up a lot of homers. And yes, I've won a Cy Young Award, but I also hold the Major League record for most home runs given up in a game. Okay, so you got to know, like, adversity's coming, boys. It's coming. It's what you do after the adversity occurs, or during the adversity, that really measures you as a man and as a baseball player. Okay, for me, I had a lot of help. I had coaches that loved on me. I had friends that were there for me. But I also was very curious, and I was coachable, because if I wasn't coachable and I thought I had all the answers, I would have been a stubborn doofus and walked out of that meeting and said, forget you, I can still pitch at 87 miles an hour. All right, I can still do it. Go ahead and release me. Somebody's going to pick me up. So there's going to come a time in your career, maybe it's early on when you're in a slump and somebody's asking you to put your hands a certain place. You don't have to end up doing it, but you should try it and then file it away in case you need it another day. Okay? Phil Necro, Charlie Huff, and Tim Wakefield were the three they were kind of like the Jedi Council of knuckleballers, right? And so I got a piece of each one of those men in my life that helped me at a certain time in my career where I really needed it. Tim Wakefield was first. When I got back up to the big leagues for the first time in 2008 as a full-time knuckleballer, we were playing the Boston Red Sox in Seattle, and I was in the bullpen as a knuckleballer. I had made the team, got called up about halfway through the first month. Tim sought me out and said, hey, I know what you're doing. I've been there. I've walked a mile in your shoes. It is so hard. Why don't you come watch my bullpen? This is a member of another team inviting me to watch his bullpen so that I can get better to beat his team. Like that was a real selfless act that was a life-changing moment for me. Because when I got to watch his bullpen, I could see that his chin never got in front of his land foot. I could see that his follow-through came right down the center of his body. And he gave me a couple of nuggets that I was able to implement. And sure enough, I got in the game 2 nights later in a big situation and ended up punching out the side. And it was like, okay, I can do this. The next guy I ran into was Charlie Huff. Charlie Huff taught me that I need to keep my mechanic within a door frame. Real compact, real efficient, real repeatable. If you're pitchers out there, the key to consistency is having a repeatable mechanic. Simplify your mechanic so you can repeat your delivery and throw strikes. If you can throw strikes, all of you guys here have good arms if you're pitching in the Eric Code games. But the difference maker for you is can you make your mechanic efficient enough so that you can repeat your delivery and throw strikes when you have to in crunch time, when it's 1st and 3rd, nobody's out, you need a double play ball. Can you get out of it? Can you execute? That's going to be the measure that you're going to be judged by from scouts and coaches alike as you grow up. Okay, so try to really think about that. How can I simplify my mechanic to repeat my delivery? So that was Charlie Huff for me. And then I had Phil Necro. And Phil Necro kind of helped me in 2010 in a way that allowed me to win the Cy Young. I had a good year in 2010, and so I went down to see him previous to this year in 2010, and he said, hey, you need to use your hips more. You need to throw an angry knuckleball. You've got a lot of arm strength. I threw a knuckleball differently than most of those guys. Most of those guys threw a knuckleball anywhere from, they could take it as low as 61, 59, and they could throw it as high as 69, 70 maybe. My knuckleball was a low of 69 and a high of 82. So I had enough arm strength to throw a knuckleball a lot harder than those guys. And Phil said, hey man, you got to use your hips and explode to your target, and you got to utilize the arm strength that you have. And that was kind of the finishing touch for me that allowed me to win a Cy Young. Because once I started doing that and throwing an angry knuckleball is what he called it, I started being really hard to hit. And so from 2010 until the end of my career, last year I retired from the Atlanta Braves. This is my first year ever it's weird being here, usually I'm playing somewhere. So I'm still trying to figure out the rhythm of all that. But all that to say is all 3 of these men poured into me in a way that was transforming. You've got to have the courage to invite people into your life that know more than you do to help you. Do not have an ego that's so large as you grow that inhibits you from being the best that you can be. You're going to be tempted to do that. You're going to be tempted to think that you have all the answers, okay? So how do you deal with adversity? Be curious, be coachable. All right? And this is the last point I want to leave you with. And it kind of is a segue from my last story. Guys, be kind. I know that's a weird thing to hear, but you guys represent what a lot of little boys are going to be looking up to in college and professional ranks. Teammates are going to be looking up to on your collegiate teams and your high school teams and your summer teams moving forward. Be kind. Be kind to the janitor. Be kind to the clubhouse manager. Be kind to your coaches. Be kind to your teammates. Because one day it's going to be over. And people will not remember that you batted .290 with 7 home runs in 2022. But they will remember that you treated them with kindness. So be kind. Practice it. Be intentional with it. That is an attribute that as you start to move away from the game, whether it's in a summer at a job or whether it's when your career's over, when all of you guys have had 10 plus years in the big leagues and you're 40. I'm 42. Wait, no, I'm 43. And I was 42 last year. But maybe you have a career that long. Guys aren't going to remember. Like, can any of you guys tell me what my statistics were in 2009? No, nobody in here can tell me that. But you might remember a handshake and a look in the eye, or you might remember a kind gesture or a kind word of encouragement. Never forget that, okay? Never forget that in Spider-Man, or whatever that movie was, it said, with great power comes great responsibility. That's a real true adage. Okay, we all have a responsibility as athletes here to be kind. So let me encourage you with that. Okay, so 3 things I want you to take away. Right? Adversity. Be coachable. Be curious. Breathe. Okay? Have fun. It's number 2. And thirdly, be kind. Be kind to each other. Be kind to your parents. Be kind to your brothers and sisters. Practice it. Okay? Just like you would practice hitting off a tee or throwing a bullpen. And good luck to every single one of you. I can't wait to watch you guys play in the big leagues in about 3 or 4 years. Thank you.